perfect joke for today because it's pet, animal blessing. That's not just pet blessing, but animal blessing. And so on my 2-week journey, man, 2 weeks can seem like nothing, and it can seem like forever. It feels like I was gone forever. So first we're in Oregon, and they give us this at the retreat center, and there's an orientation. I guess they have city folk come there, and they're not used to living and being out in the country, and so they told us about what animals to look out for while you were there, and the things you expect, the deers and the squirrels and an occasional bear, and then they're like, oh yeah, the skunks, and I was like, oh yeah, skunks. I totally forgotten about skunks. Made sure I told Nancy, so we were both on the lookout for skunks as we were going back to our rooms in this sort of darkness, and making sure we were keeping an eye out for skunks, because otherwise I would have never even thought about it. So the animals were walking along, but we saw some deer, which was nice, and I didn't see any skunks, which was just the way I like it. I like them to live in their own little worlds. And then I went to Florida, and I did not see any crocodiles, but there's always that possibility. So as the skunks, I like to let them live in their own little world and don't need them to be part of my experience. But I saw some other animals, and I got a ride back to the airport with my cousin, who's a nature guy. He actually gives bird watching tours as his business. And so he's like, oh, that's a such and such, and that's a such and such, and that's a such and such. And I couldn't tell you what any of them were now, but it was very interesting at the time, and learning about the trees and that part of Florida. And so then I go to Texas, and I was sort of just staying in the suburbs, so I didn't get to hang out with a lot of animals. But we went to the Arboretum one day, and there was this tree that was like the birds. They were so loud doing this thing that they were talking, and you could barely even see them. I don't know where they were, whether it was just a couple making a lot of noise, or if they were just up far or on the other side of some other trees. But they were having a convention, as my father would say, and that was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, the animals that I prefer to let them leave me alone and not have them be part of my experience did get a hold of me there in Texas, and that was the mosquitoes. And nowhere along the way I got to play with anybody's pets, which is really unusual too. Usually you get to get some pet action in. And we know that, but I also got to brag, because people are always, as you know, when you go other places, they're like, well, what's Alaska like? And I tell them, well, I saw a beluga whale the week before I left, and they're like, oh, wow. So I was kind of thinking about this because, it's Pet Blessing or Animal Blessing Sunday, and we don't yet have a pet, but that's on our agenda. And I was thinking about how here I feel like I feel like all of the animals that are part of our Alaska experience are part of, like, not that they're only mine, but that they're ours. Keeping an eye out for the moose and the birds and the belugas and all the other critters that are part of our experience. And if you go on a hike with Roger, you might see more than you expect, because he knows where to look. And so it's not a surprise, there's all these studies that say having pets and having animals be part of our life is good for us. Self-esteem, having pets around when you're younger helps reduce your risk of allergies when you're older. They can help reduce our negativity. I don't think probably a surprise to those of us who have pets. They can reduce loneliness. They make us feel supported. They actually did this study where here it is. They took a bunch of stressed out stockbrokers and gave half of them dog and cats, while leaving the others without pets. And those given pets for the course of the study exhibited significantly more stable blood pressure than those without. So much so that when the control group learned about the study's finding, many of them went and got a pet to help them manage their stress. So I think that's pretty fun. And of course, when I visit somebody who has a cat, I get my cat time in, so I can experience that. Even one of my fellow Northwest Region board members, we've stayed at her house a number of times, and she was on her way home, and I said, pet Krishna for me, because he and I have a thing. And just that, right, brought me joy. So I was thinking about all the animals, and I know you all are tuned into what's going on, tuned into our natural world and all of those things. And so today is just a day to remember, because we do it in the first week in October, because this is St. Francis of Assisi feast day. It was a couple days ago, and so it's sort of the traditional time that we remember the animals. And you might remember that I was actually at the Pope's blessing on the day of St. Francis of Assisi last year, so I have extra special stuff. And so it's a time to remember our connection with all of the things, all creatures great and small, and that we are all part of that those creatures of creation, that we're all made of the same stuff. And that we're in the animals, the pet animals in our lives, we give them a lot and they give us a lot, but I would say that the big animals, the wild animals in our lives gives a lot too. There's some small nuthatches that like to hang out in the tree right outside the window of Bill's office, and he just loves to watch them, and they bring him so much joy and curiosity and engagement. And isn't that wonderful to be paying attention enough to notice these kind of things that are going on in our world? And so I had this thought as I was thinking about all this, and I'm a vegetarian. Part of it's because that's what I like to eat, and part of it's, I think about the animals and all of that. And if there's the critter that's, like, we had a caterpillar in our room when we were at conference, I got it on a thing and I took it outside, and I do that with most animals and all that. And then I was thinking about the mosquitoes. And I was like, well, I guess I've drawn a line, haven't I? And you wonder what the evolutionary purpose of mosquitoes is. I mean, at least I wonder that. And I don't have an answer to this. This is just the question that I thought of as I was kind of chewing on this morning, about how we can say all of the critters are good, and we think it's important. Even the spiders, they do important things and all of that. We're all on board, and then we draw a line. Mosquitoes, a little harder, right? Maybe you say, oh, well, I have an agreement with mosquitoes. If they leave me alone, I'll leave them alone, and that's great, or I have that same agreement with other, what we consider common pests. If they leave me alone, I'll leave them alone. And then I was like, well, how does that apply to people or situations? And you're like, oh yeah, everybody is good and worthy and all of that, except for the mosquito people. It's just a thought, just something. I don't know what the answer is. It just came to me that I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, so who I put over in the category with the mosquitoes, at least at some level, right? Because I'm not going to squish anybody anytime soon. Mosquito, that may happen, right? Of course, they're trying to eat me, so it does seem kind of fair at one level. But this is an interesting thought. I don't, something to chew on. We can talk about it more later, I suppose. What can, do we put? We put the animals ahead of the people. That's also an interesting thought. People are. Sometimes in our society we put animal where we have more laws about treatment of animals than we do about some people. It's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah. So I didn't mean to be a downer, but goodness. So I was really really hoping that I was going to see a moose today on my way to church, so that could be part of my story about like how the animals, I've had all these experiences with animals the last couple weeks, different places, and I was going to come home and, the official moose greeters, because usually they like to hang out on the way to the airport and just say, it's like, my husband thinks that they're paid by the tourism bureau to hang out by the sign, but they weren't apparently when I came to town, which is kind of a bummer. But I'm sure that the moose will show up but I did get to see fish also the week before I left, so all the Alaska animals were saying, have a good trip, come back soon. So we will do the animal blessing, the pet blessing, and we'll do it for our individual pets and things after we're done with service. But I'd like us to just take a few minutes, meditative type of minutes, to think about all of the animals, just like we think of all of the kids of the world during our children's blessing. We bless them all, and we see them as whole and filled with all their resources. I just like us to take a few minutes to imagine all the animals of the world, not just the pets or the farm animals and all of those, but all the way down to the mosquitoes, and all the way up to the whales. Those are down and up just because of size, not because of importance. So let's just take a few moments to think about the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the ones that slither, the ones that fly, the ones that swim. From the coldest regions to the warmest, to the jungles, to the deserts. We send that affirmation of well-being, that affirmation of worthiness and ability to take up space on our planet, a willingness to share. The knowing that we are all made up of the same stuff. Little insects that have a lifespan of less than a day, to the tortoises whose life spans more than a century, to the jellyfish that regenerate. All the animals through the ages who have helped the evolutionary process of people. And so we send our blessings out into the world, around the world, and right here to our own backyard. We bless the moose and the bears, the fish, and even the mosquitoes, the birds, all going about their day and their way. I am grateful to live in a moose's backyard.